Hi, so I am Kasha Miller. I am the Assistant Dean of Student Success and Retention at Bluegrass Community and Technical College. And I am a Senior Fellow on the Gateway Course Success component. So let's see, who do we have left? Shane.
Good morning. I'm Shane Redmond. I'm chair of the Department of Mathematics and Statistics at Eastern Kentucky University, and I am also on the Gateway Course Success team with the CPE.
Hey, Chris, your turn.
Awesome. Awesome. Great to meet you all. Chris Holloman, professor of education and public policy at the University of Virginia. I also run a group called Motivate Lab, where we partner with state systems and institutions to change the psychological error at institutions. So instead of like fixing kids and telling them they got to be grittier, we want to fix the psychological error so everyone breathes in that gritty growth mindset supportive air. And before I was a professor and leading this team, I was a high school teacher and coach. I also worked as a college crisis counselor and residence hall director and student affairs for 5 years. So super awesome to meet you all.
Thanks, Brett. Well, we're here today because we have a really wonderful budding partnership with our Office of Adult Education in Kentucky. And we also have a strategy around Gateway Course Success to really push as hard as we can on improving the early academic success of students. And in particular, they're focused on success in co-requisite and early math and English courses. I know that we don't want to be limited to just those disciplines, but those do seem to be some pretty significant disciplines related to early academic success and other important milestones. So the leaders of this strategy, Ashley, as well as our Gateway Course Success Senior Fellows, who are our boots on the ground campus partners, who really know what's happening in the classrooms and the curriculum and are in touch with all the faculty, are really the prioritizers and the drivers of our strategy. And we know that faculty are the key to all of this. And so in partnership with Adult Ed, we've really been looking for what would be some really high impact professional development, faculty development approaches that we can take that would allow us to hopefully impact students in a pretty, powerful way. And, Chris, hearing you kind of share your work at the Louisiana meeting and know that you've done this at the state level, we're interested both in impacting and working with our faculty that are teaching our co-requisite courses in Kentucky, as well as our instructors teaching in our adult education program across the state. And so, those are focused on both the gamut of students from all different backgrounds, adult learners, first generation, students from low income backgrounds, students of very diverse, just very diverse student bodies. So very interested in hearing if you could tell us more about the work that you've done, the impact that you've seen, the results, and just more about the faculty mindset, PD, and how you've seen it play out in really impacting student success.
Yeah, thanks for that context. Really appreciate that, and really excited to hear about kind of the elements of the work and just as a commentary. We've worked with the state systems in Tennessee, Georgia, Louisiana, California, CUNY, and Ohio, and where we see, and then I've seen, other approaches in other states, and where it's successful, it's when it's a multi-pronged effort like you all are doing. And it can't just be about, targeting classroom supports. It can't just be about curricular pathways. There's other aspects that are in this leaky pipeline of higher education. So yeah, we've worked with Oregon as well. And I think of Oregon because they have this sort of association that's not part of the state, and they've struggled a little bit to galvanize people around a multi-pronged attack. And so, yeah, just as a commentary, just the way you've built this and having faculty fellows who are folks at institutions is a baked into our approach as well. So yeah, just let me say that as a bit of commentary. Lily, I didn't, bring my slide deck. So is it like I could pull up slides, but I could also just like talk about some aspects of the work. What would be best?
Yeah, I think just a high level overview would be great so that everybody gets a better understanding. I didn't prep them with much information at all. So
Okay.
they need to know, starting from square one, what you're talking about and what you do. And then I would
Yeah,
like them to be able to ask questions, because this would be a pretty significant element of our
yeah.
statewide strategy, and adult education is really providing a significant part of our funding. And so we also want to make sure that it really meets their needs and their goals as far as improving the success rates of our adult learners in the GED pathways as they're being prepared to transition into post-secondary.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just tempted to pull up slides, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, I was
going to say, I think I have your deck too, if you want me to, but feel free to do whatever you need to do.
well, let me just try this. Like, if you walk up to me in a bar, how would I get you excited about this work? So I started as as a practitioner, as a teacher, and then later as a college football coach and a residence hall director. And at that time, for me, it was about how do I help you as an individual get what you want out of life? Do you want to be a starting right guard on the football team? Do you want to get a degree in engineering? Like what is it that I want to help you do? And let me help you motivate you. And what you learn from doing that for a while. The hardest lessons I learned with this was as a social worker. Yeah, I can help people individually, like have better goals, have better self-regulation skills, have better study skills. That all matters. But the system you surround yourself matters a ton too. And as an individual practitioner, as a social worker, out of 10 kids, I might have been successful with one. And one of the major pieces was I couldn't change their system. I could get to know their parents and their teachers and their coaches and their friends but like I couldn't, if their system was leading them down a path, it was really hard for me as an individual to be like, okay, let's change your friend network, let's change your school network, let's change, how you're interacting with your teachers, let's give you different teachers. I couldn't do all that. Systemic approaches really matter. And so that's the approach we've adopted in Motivate Lab, where we're taking the science of motivation of individuals and we're translating that into changes in the learning context, in the teaching and learning context. And so one of the places that we said that we've decided to start is in the classroom. And that's a couple of reasons. One, the higher ed experience is designed around academic success. So first off, that's a fulcrum point for students. Second, faculty, regardless of their positionality, or instructors, I should say, regardless of their positionalities at an institution, they do have a lot of control about how they interact with students. So you might not be able to choose your textbook, you might not be able to choose the day of the week and the time of your classes, or even some of the tests for some courses that are tuned across large sections, but you do get to decide, how do I start off the first day? Do I, address every student by name? Do I do things that try to understand students' identities and how that might connect to the material? Is my grading approach, does it emphasize one and done, or do I offer opportunities to grow and learn? So you can make a difference in your classroom space based on how you design it that impacts student motivation and engagement. And so our pillars to that are, do we have someone new join? I feel like my screen changed.
Yes, Dr. Gregory's been able to join the call.
Oh,
Dr. Gregory is the director of the adult education for Kentucky. He is my boss. I assume that he'll get on and introduce himself as soon as he's got a second.
Cool.
Hey, my apologies for being late. I'm actually at the VA hospital with my wife at an appointment, so I just stepped outside to join. So don't mind me, so just continue.
Well, welcome, Dr. Gregory. I'm Chris Holloman from the Motivate Lab and professor at University of Virginia. I was just going over my stuff. Lily, did you want to say something?
Thanks for being with us, John.
Oh, no problem.
So if you're like, okay, Chris, that sounds great. Let's change the psychological air in classrooms. That then translates to changing the psychological air in the culture. We're not blaming students for not being gritty, because we know many of our students are, it's just a lot of grit to show up in class. So yeah, we get it. How are we going to do that? So sure, I'm glad you asked that question. So, you know, one of the things we talk about is, there's a lot of constructs in psychology that we could try to embed in the classroom, but we picked 3 that we think are really impactful. And these 3 are really important psychological skills and mindsets to have when you're uncertain. And, I'm holding up my cell phone, if you can see it, but this has GPS in it, and I use this a lot. And when do you use like your app for your map app on your phone? When are you pulling that out, David?
When I'm not quite sure where I'm going, and when I absolutely have to get there at a certain point in time.
Okay, it's high stakes and when you're uncertain. And just like we use our GPS on our phones when we're uncertain, we use our mindset GPS when we're psychologically uncertain. Psychological uncertainty can come from starting something new, like a new job. Welcome, Ashley. Day one, maybe you have some uncertainty about what's going to happen in your work life now, right? You start, you move to a new place, you start a new school, or maybe you taking classes that you haven't taken a long time. Like, I don't want to take math. I want to be a nurse, but you're telling me I got to take math. Or like something bad happened. You failed your first quiz or test. Maybe you failed a course. Maybe you failed a relationship. Those things all create psychological uncertainty for us, and our GPS can help us get us through that. So G stands for what psychological thing around motivation have you heard of that might start with G? Anybody have any ideas?
Bro.
All right, Lily has probably seen me talk,
No.
but oh no, you haven't. Okay, all right. So growth mindset, coined by Carol Dweck back in the day. This is, do I believe I can grow and improve? It's a belief plus, like, do I try hard things? Do I fail? Am I willing to be vulnerable and then learn? So G is growth. P, purpose and relevance. I won't make you guess. So why? This is like, why am I doing this? And that's like, why am I having to learn the quadratic formula in math class? Or why am I coming to this meeting that I'm at right now? Like, do you know that as a professional? Motivation is a human challenge. It's not a student challenge only. So we have to attend that for all of us. So G is growth, P is purpose, S, anyone? Bueller, sense of belonging. So do I feel like in this space, I'm accepted, I'm respected, I'm for my identity characteristics, whatever they are, however I'm showing up in that space. Do I feel like there are people there who care for me? And do I trust them to have my back? And one of the reasons we've chose those 3 constructs is that they're especially powerful for students who are traditionally minoritized and underrepresented and underserved in the context. So stereotype threat is something a lot of us have heard about when you are worried that you are going to confirm a negative stereotype about your group. So if you're a woman in an engineering major, for example, or if you're a person of color in any space in higher ed, that you're concerned about these negative stereotypes. And so doing things that promote students' inclusion and belonging in the space is especially powerful for people who are feeling uncertain in those spaces. It helps everybody, but especially powerful. So what we do is we train faculty to make tweaks to their pedagogy, make tweaks to their materials, make tweaks to their messages that support students' growth, purpose, sense of belonging. We work with advisors. Hey, what kind of messaging are you sending about why you're taking these courses? This pathway of classes, this 5-course sequence may make perfect intellectual sense to whoever designed it, but for the student sitting there, those are all hurdles in the way of what they want, which might be a degree, it might be a well-paying job, whatever it is. So you got to give them some purpose. Like, why are those things going to help you other than check, 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 here's your piece of paper, go on your way? I think all of us are in education because we want people to leave with knowledge and skills. They can do something better with their lives. If I just give you a piece of paper, you're not any better. Nothing is demonstrably better about you and what you know about yourself in the world. So let's provide that value for students as advisors, as administrators. How are we communicating these policy changes? Are they, co-requisite supports? There's ways that we can communicate co-requisite supports that can emphasize, hey, we believe in your potential to grow. We believe so much that we're going to put you right into gen ed, math, and English. I'm also going to give you this co-requisite support class because I believe in your potential, even though your academic transcripts might indicate you might struggle in this course, but we believe you can get there. As opposed to, I don't tell you anything and I just say, hey, you got to take math and here's this extra co-requisite support course. Now all of a sudden you feel like you're in the Robins, you're in the reading group, the slow reading group. I all had the Blue Jays and the Robins and whatever reading groups when we were in elementary school. Everybody knew who were the slow readers and who were the fast readers, whatever we called the groups. But if I just give you co-requisite support and I don't tell you why, now you feel like you're in remedial developmental, and maybe if you're already doubting whether you should be there because your race, class, gender, whatever, now I'm just adding to your uncertainty. And so this is where those practices help buffer against exacerbating uncertainties, help students connect. All right, so pause. I got you interested to think about, like, motivation isn't just the responsibility of the student, it's the responsibility of the system to create environments that have healthy psychological air. I told you, like, hey, here's some psychology, GPS and mindsets, and we're going to have faculty teach differently and advisors interact with students differently. All right, how do you do that? So, and then I will stop, I promise. So the approach we developed is multifaceted, and in the proposal I sent had a lot of those elements, but here's the idea. Motivation is a human problem. Adults have to buy in too. So we can't just say, hey, Motivate Lab's doing this workshop, you should go. We have to build that will from the ground up and the top down. And so, our approach really is to show people why mindsets are important and contextualize that within the challenge in their context. So we'll collect data in advance from faculty and students, ideally, and then show them, hey, here's how students perceive you, here's how you're perceiving students and the mismatches, and we can help you get there. So one of the questions we'll ask faculty is, do you believe your students can grow in math, English, social studies, whatever? And then we'll ask students, do you think your faculty believe in your potential to grow? And then we'll show those graphs. And everywhere we go, the story is the same. Faculty are like, yes, students can grow. And students are like, my faculty don't really believe that I can grow. And then faculty are like, wait a minute, what's wrong with these students? And why don't they see me? And we're like, well, what are you doing? How are you communicating this to students? Look at your syllabus. If you say at the top row of your syllabus, I don't accept late work, how is that communicating you care about them, you believe in their potential to grow, and that this class is important to them? What you said is follow the rules, don't be a pain in the butt. So we do that with faculty too. We say, hey, let's get you all on board. So that's where, like, the convenings or the little short intro course where we get you excited about Mindset GPS. And once we've done that, then we have an asynchronous experience for instructors. It can take 8 to 20 hours, like, depending on how much you want to do, where you go through, you learn some of the science, we talk about some of the practices, and then there's 11 different projects that you can choose from to do. Like, let's write an email to a struggling student and let's use Mindset GPS supported language, or let's revise your syllabus, or let's create engaging activities, active learning activities. Let's do them in ways that support Mindset GPS. Like I said, with the co-rec support class, the way you message that to students can support their growth and belief in themselves and their potential, or it can like make them feel undermined. Active learning strategies are the same thing. You know, if I just say, hey, time for group work, pick your partners, now get to work, here's your problem. Well, what if you're the kid that doesn't get picked? Now, how are you feeling? Your belonging all of a sudden is down. Or you get in a group and everybody starts talking and you can't get a word in edgewise. Like now your belonging's in the tank. Or you're in the group and your group mates don't do their work. And now you're like, we're going to fail this class or we're going to fail this assignment. We got to teach them how to group, and we got to do it in a way that supports their feelings of belonging, their sense of purpose, and their belief in their potential to grow. So that's what faculty learn in this course. And then once we've had a group of faculty go through the course, then we identify the standouts who want to be champions. And we train them to be faculty fellows. And they lead communities of practice in their local spaces. And so in Louisiana, they have the momentum framework they use, and they use the Cajun spelling of momentum, which is MEAUX, and then the rest of momentum. And our faculty fellows are likely similarly have a Cajun flavor. They are mindset motivators with MEAUX VAT. It's the worst thing to try to type. Yeah. But it's like, they love it. Like people just get into this stuff. And they're in their second year right now. There's 13 of them working across the state, and we're gonna up that this year. We may double it, I think, to work across all 30 institutions in Louisiana. But that's the kind of the boots on the ground community practice supports that go in place to help folks. As you know, when you try something new, it doesn't always go awesome. And so it can, without that additional support, you might say, growth mindset doesn't work. You know, my students, you know, they're never gonna, you know, this is never gonna work for them, and you give up. Versus, hey, we tried it, we failed. You hear somebody else, maybe Lily's like, hey, I tried this and it actually went really well. And you're like, oh, I didn't do it that way. Maybe I could try it that way. And what's been really cool in that group, it's 50-50 math and English. And they are learning as much across math and English as they are just talking to each other. So there is power in, you know, getting folks within a discipline, within a content area talking. There is pedagogical content knowledge that's unique to statistics versus algebra 2 and English versus writing, reading versus writing. But it's really been instructive for people to look across and go, oh, you know, Dr. Potter did this in his writing 101 class. He introduced growth mindset in this way. I would have never thought to do that in math class that way, but I think it could work if I just tweak it a little bit. And a lot of light bulbs were going off in August when we were down there with the mindset motivators, who, by the way, in terms of building will, the vice chancellor of the system, Tristan Denley, at the second day of that convening where we had them for a day and a half with our mindset motivators, the second day, he brought 2 of them into the Board of Regents meeting. And Tristan presented like the whole momentum work. And then he said, we've got this mindset motivators group that's doing stuff. And then he had 2 of them present to the board, which was really cool moment. And there's just a lot of like light bulbs going off up there on the stage where all the, you know, however many 12 or 13 members of the Board of Regents were. But that's the way in which like you build will back in the system, because you're like, hey, what's going on with, you know, all this work we're doing? And then you hear them talking about, all right, so I'm going to shut up. That's kind of our system. We do like to, as a part of that, get student and faculty surveys so that they can sort of baseline and so that we can see how things move. But like I said, we use that data for faculty so they can see, oh, did I make progress here on students' perceptions of me, their perceptions of their own mindsets. And we use it to, like, you know, galvanize the will. So there are other pieces that I can put in play in terms of evaluation, assessment, and all that. But that's kind of the picture. And we're currently in Louisiana and California community college system doing this same model.
You had mentioned also advisors. Is there a separate, or is it a mix? equivalent process or training with them?
Yeah, great question. So we, like I said, we started with faculty, but we do have a separate project where we've developed a course for post-secondary advisors. So these are mostly the folks who are working with current high school students. And our next phase is adapting that for advisors who are working in the higher ed space. It's so we are like, but our work with advisors to this point has been more of the in-person kind of workshop stuff than the course. So
What
so I wouldn't
about-
yeah, sorry. So I just say I wouldn't recommend. We do have sometimes advisors take our course designed for instructors, but usually like you get through the first part and then you get to the projects and you're like, oh yeah, like maybe these two email, because we have two different email projects which are really popular. Those are pretty translatable, but the rest of the project, like revise your syllabus, like that doesn't make a lot of sense for someone. So yeah, we are in construction on the course for advisors, but we do have like workshops.
Are you also considering training for whether you call them co-curricular or academic support areas? Because sometimes they have more interaction with our students.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And so you're right. We do have, and so we have a partnership with a very large National Medical Association working on medical education. And so we are developing a course for student support staff in medical schools. So yeah, everybody from student affairs to financial aid and mental health and everywhere in between. Interestingly, like health services is a really important place where this messaging gets sent. And I'll just say personally, our youngest child is a high or a college freshman, and we found out he had mono like a week before he's supposed to start college, which was a big bummer for a lot of reasons, including he's a cross country runner, so he can't like go and join the cross country team right away. So when his mom and I moved him in, we walked to the nurse's office. We're like, hey, CJ, let's just have you go in, introduce yourself, and just, set up like if anything happens, if you take a step backwards, if you're really tired, you can't get to class. And this woman just like hugged him and was just like, hey, like we are here to help you. And it was just like, I can leave right now. My child is in good hands. But it made such an impact on him too, because he said, later on, like 2 days later, he went over and got a COVID test and talked to the woman because he thought he had got exposed to COVID. But we don't realize all the touch points students have. You are the institution. You might be the janitor. You might be, whoever, but you are the institution. And how do you send a message of belonging, purpose, growth to these students? It's really important. So yeah, we're in the developmental stage of that. I will say, did I pronounce your name Kasha or
Caution, yeah.
Yeah, Kasha. Because folks outside the classroom have so many different ways in which they show up for students, so many different roles. Thinking about what the projects are that those folks do has been a little bit more of a challenge for us, but we're figuring it out. But really excited because I did spend 5 years in student affairs and in student life, so those are my people.
So if I understood this correctly, when you're getting started with a new institution, whether it's a single or a system or whatever, start with an actual convening of some form so that everybody gets on board and gets motivated. And then there's an asynchronous part and follow up and champions and all that stuff. Yes.
Yeah, that's the way we'd recommend it. We have done it the other way where we rely on the system to get people energized, but that hasn't been as successful.
I think Lily would agree that it's challenging.
What do these convenings typically look like? Is it, you mentioned somewhere in there a day and a half convening? Is it, a full day? Is it a couple days? What does the convening look like in general?
Yeah. The convening I was referring to was our mindset motivators, and they're like, advanced level. So that was like multiple days. So, but for the the intro, it's never more than a day. It's sometimes maybe more like a half day. We've done them in person and virtually, depending on the context. And I'll learn, we have learned in California, such a big state, there's 119 community colleges. People want in person and local. And so we have been like, that's like, you want us to do 30 convenings? Like, I'm not sure we're ready for that. Well, we're definitely not ready for that. So we're still like trying to figure that out. But we've really successful in Tennessee, Georgia, and Louisiana doing in person. Also CUNY, but everyone's in New York City, so they just hop on the train. It's a little bit easier. So I'm not sure what Kentucky's like, and if people are used to navigating the driving a few hours or whatever. But I would say our preference is in person because it just has a lot more pizzazz. But we have done this in virtually as well. But yeah, like 9 to 3, something like that, where people can they can get up a little early and drive a little late, and they don't have to stay overnight if they don't want to.
And do you have a team? No,
Yeah, we
Purchase.
have we have folks who have more research experience. We have folks who are not trained as researchers. We try to integrate both research and practice in all of our teams. So I guess the other thing I didn't say, and I should have said this, like all the practices that we recommend have evidence behind them.
Yep.
And they may not have evidence in your context, like because you haven't done it, but we're only trying to recommend things that have some good level of rigorous research behind it. And some things have more than others, but so that's why we integrate research and practice internally in our teams as well.
Yeah, this is actually lining up very, very well with what at my particular institution, some of the things we have been trying to do to various degrees of success, such as the student-friendly syllabus, the students first, everybody's responsible, and has an impact on student success. We haven't had quite as much success with growth mindset and advising and things like that, but baby steps. But this seems like a much more comprehensive approach, and that I like.
Okay, so I had some questions about the adult learner context
Yeah.
here. There's a lot of ways in which the core populations that adult education deals with across the state are similar to, overlapping with, or leading into the post-secondary population. I guess first I just wanted to ask, if you had any experience working with, adult learners, folks who are, working on their GED or high school equivalent, or having recently come off completing it, folks who are English language learners, perhaps have some kind of certification elsewhere, but working on English as their primary focus right now, and then the sort of broader context that we find adult learners in, like recovery and justice related contexts. Do you have any experience, and what's that like? And then also, mentioning the research based tactics, does any of that research touch these populations in particular? I want to know if how relevant it's going to be for these folks.
Yeah, you're looking for some purpose here, and how does this connect to those folks, right? Yeah, so absolutely. In a lot of ways, a lot of touch points with adult learners. So, we've been working in community college developmental education since 2013. And as you, I'm sure, are aware, if you want to find a lot of adult learners, go to community college. So early on with our work at Valencia College down in Orlando, they also had a strong interest in supporting adult learners. So a lot of the work we were doing down there was actually helping adult learners connect, well, in two ways. It was around growth mindset and purpose. It was helping them connect like this developmental math to like what they wanted to do in their careers, because a lot of them were coming back, and one of the reasons why they didn't go right on to school is they struggled in math. So there's a lot of math trauma. So getting folks both to see the purpose, but also to believe they could do it. And one of the really interesting learnings there was a lot of our adult learners came back and they're like, oh, navigating the technology, the learning management platforms, and like it was scary, but they also felt more like, hey, I had to do these 3 jobs since I got out of high school, and I know how to learn. I'm not sure I'm going to navigate all the other stuff, including, you know, I've got kids, I got job, like, so it's the navigation of tech and the navigation of their lives. But they were also, so they really responded well to our work around purpose. So, and I've got a report for the Strong Start to Finish network that shows that sort of adult learners benefited, especially for our purpose intervention we were doing in math classes. So that's one way we've worked with adult learners. A second way, not only adult learners, but also ESL and non-native English, ESL, and just those who are struggling to learn the language. Our partnership with Nashville State Community College, we worked on first-year experience courses there to help students make connections just between going to college and what they wanted to get out of life. And Nashville State has, I think about 1/3 of their students are international, a lot of ESL, a lot of adult learners. So customizing our work for that space had us in that adult learning space. And one of the women we worked really closely with, Dr. Jessica Rabb, who, I don't know if you met her, Lily, she was at the Momentum Summit. She was one of the mindset experts there we were at. She currently works with incarcerated populations in applying this work there. We haven't done an empirical study of it, but her anecdotal experience was she was worried. She teaches, so not only does she do FYE courses, she's also she's a bio. That's her background is biology. So she does biology in prisons without lab equipment, which is really impressive. You got to you really work hard to make this real. But she said that she does the purpose activity with them that she does when first year experience courses. Like, why are you taking these classes while you're in prison? And just the purpose of wanting to give back to their families, to be a role model, to say, hey, I might have messed up and my kids might think I'm a failure, but if I can, be successful in education, then I can show people, hey, anything's possible. So just the purpose part really resonating with those folks. So those are some of the examples I would just say around adult learners and learners who are coming to the space with not all the skills maybe that they might need around English to be super successful, or all the English knowledge that we assume they have. And I could probably share some others as well, but yeah, we're really finding that those folks have belonging concerns. They're just a little different than an 18-year-old coming in, right? They have purpose challenges, but those purpose challenges are a little different. It's more like, oh, I have a family, I have a job, I have other things I got to do. And then the growth challenge, the challenge to have a growth mindset for themselves can be a little different, but they're still there. And those practices that you would do as a faculty member to support an 18-year-old with GP&S also will help the adult learner. They just might have a different way they're connecting to the material than an 18-year-old. So yeah, David, I'm not sure how that lands.
No, that's great. Excellent. That did answer that question. I'll say that the teaching context that a lot of our adult educators find themselves in is pretty radically different than the kind of context that you'd see in a post-secondary institution, right? So very often, probably not syllabi, we're not talking grades, we're not talking passing courses, we're not talking that sort of broader structure. So thinking about what those 11 activities look like might take some work to contextualize for that portion of the population. I'll just throw that out there. So, in reading the proposal that Lily sent us, the one big concern that I had, the one thing that I really wanted to be able to talk with you about for our educators is thinking about growth mindset with respect to advancing into post-secondary education. I'm sure that if you asked our educators, are your students capable of learning? The educators to say, yes, they definitely are. I'm not so sure that our educators would give as positive, confident results if you ask them whether or not our students are capable of being successful in the post-secondary context. I don't have data. That's the vibe that I get. How would we deal with that, right? Like, are we prepared to help the educators understand that, yes, in fact, they're capable of, developing this growth mindset across these institutions and really, reaching for the stars? I think as a coach, you might be in a place to have some understanding about this.
Oh yeah, I'd just say, like, you would be surprised how much variability there is in belief about whether students can be successful. So if you go to, like, some of faculty I know at the University of Virginia, they will have very fixed beliefs about, like, you need to be brilliant if you're going, you need to have, you need to be a math person if you're really going to make it in math. So we have had, my point here is we've had a lot of those people in our workshops. And yeah, they can be a harder sell in some cases, but it's really a matter of finding the P for them. Like, what is it? Like, why would they want to do something different? Sorry, there's a dog around here. Why would they want to do something different? And some of them want to do something different because they believe in students' potential to grow and they don't think that they're meeting it, and so they want to do it. But for others, it's about, okay, you're not sure if these students can grow. Okay, why is that? And then what happens if you start to behave differently? And maybe G isn't the way to start with you. Maybe it's S. Like, okay, at least let's eliminate uncertainties about belonging and let's start there. Because what we find over and over again, it's, I can't say I've converted every single person who's ever taken our workshop to a believer, but, like, you start to see students react differently, and it's a drug. It really is. So we had a math faculty member in Louisiana email the chancellor, like, he's never met the chancellor, just found her information on the website in Louisiana. He said, this is what he said. He said, I was kind of skeptical. I took this Motivate Lab course, but I thought I'd give it a shot. I teach, intro math, and I taught differently, and I thought it went pretty well, but I wasn't sure. And in January, I had 8 students from my class come to talk to me, not about their grade, but they wanted my advice on what classes to take next. I've never had students come to ask me, like, what to do next, but they felt comfortable. And he said, I did a lot of things for sense of belonging, and I guess it paid off. So it's just one of those, like, you see it and it just takes you like 2 or 3 students to react differently. And it's like the dam opens, like the floodgates come pouring out. But yeah, we get people who are resistant for a lot of reasons, David, and some of it's they don't believe students can learn, but oftentimes it's, quite honestly, they're disgruntled. Like, they were forced to do stuff. They don't think they have the resources. They don't think they have the support. So we have to attend to their mindsets too. But at the end of the day, a lot of the things we're suggesting, they don't take a lot of time and effort. Some of them do, but they don't always take a lot of time. And if they can make some small changes, usually have some good results. But
Speaking of results, so I mean, your approach is systematic, right? I mean, it is changing perceptions on how we teach and how we deliver. But has there been any actual movement in student success? Like, yeah.
Yeah, great question. So as you might imagine, getting good evaluation data is tough because we're mostly supported through professional development support funds. So we haven't had the luxury to have a lot of evaluation dollars, but we've had some. The College Futures Foundation actually support us with some evaluation dollars. So that we evaluated the effect of the course at a Cal State in math at Cal Poly Pomona, and we had 60 faculty in the study, 35 in the treatment, and we had 35 control faculty. And I'm not sure how much you know about evaluation and methods, but we used it's called a quasi-experimental design. So we didn't randomize faculty, but we used a matching procedure to find faculty who didn't volunteer to take the course, who were very similar in lots of characteristics, including, being math faculty, types of students they taught. And I can send you, we have a paper that was published in the for an engineering conference. So it's a conference paper, but I can share the results there. So for that sample of faculty who took our course, and some of them have 1 semester of data, some have 2. Average increase in pass rates in intro math was like 3.5%. And then for students from marginalized groups, and we were able to track racial and ethnic minorities and Pell eligible students, the pass rates were double, like 6 to 8%. So we had grades and pass rates for those folks. So small sample, it's about 3,200 students, like I said, 60 faculty. Exciting thing in Louisiana, I think the Ascendium Foundation is going to support the evaluation of our mindset motivators and the kind of impact it's having in the system. And we're going to try to focus as much qualitative as quantitative on that one to see like what kinds of supports are needed in the space. But that's in the works. But that's our initial evaluation. Of course, we have all of our own internal evaluation that we've done around like faculty attitudes and beliefs and knowledge growth, and that looks, really impressive. But getting the student data has been a little tricky. So I see Lily's dropping some stuff in here, including like at the California level, for example. Here's an interesting thing: the system office can't connect specific students to specific faculty. So they can say this student was in this course section, but they can't link the course section to the faculty because of the agreements with the union and all this stuff. So we can't evaluate faculty who go through our course using system data. So we're having to go to every individual community college, get an IRB with every single, so maybe we're gonna get some evaluation data, but it's taking us a while in California, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know if the CPE data connects to the faculty level or not, but obviously their college data does. And in the community college, we can do it on a system level because we have 16 community colleges in the single Kentucky system. That can be acquired. Not sure about at Lily's level.
It's a matter of like making sure you can do the linkages between the course sections and faculty on one hand and students on the other. And if we can, whether that's grades, pass rates, course evaluations, or anything else, like that's be tremendously valuable in this situation.
Because ultimately that I think is all of our goals. Is ultimately we want to improve student success, whether that's completion of a credential or just individually retention or just passing the courses that are in. So it's usually an easier sell with academic. If we can say, yes, we're going to help change our culture, and the consequence of that, here are some, positive impacts that have been seen in the past. I'm just thinking of the selling piece.
Yeah, and what we find typically in our psychological research is that increases in grades and pass rates are usually, the effect size is usually smaller than like changes in motivation. But one of the things that happens is like that change in motivation is really a strong predictor of persistence. So
that's the key, and
so
sometimes that's
like
where I go to.
Yeah, so like, and that's the other thing we could do if it could be in more of our control to try to like incentivize faculty to get students to complete surveys, and like if you can think about like pre and post a semester, that change in student motivation over time is really powerful. And that, like in our longitudinal work, when we've looked at some of our targeted interventions on purpose and growth mindset, it's that that when I'm exiting the course, like, do I have a belief in myself to learn, and do I think there's a purpose to what I'm doing? Then that predicts, hey, am I going to stay in college? Am I going to stay in this major? It's even
Exactly.
more important than grades.
I
So
agree.
yeah,
But a lot of our interventions, I can't say that it had a significant impact on pass rates for that course. But we can show an impact on persistence and retention. And that is
yeah,
important. I mean,
yeah.
that's very, very important. Especially for something where you're trying to change somebody's mindset and motivation. You're not going to see necessarily immediate impacts on a grade from that. What you want to see is an increased improvement in behaviors.
Yeah, one of the things we found with our purpose intervention in community college math is it was increasing, it was decreasing dropout at the 6-week mark. And then, obviously you're not dropping out. Now you have you're not withdrawing from the class. You're much more likely, you have a shot to pass.
The shot to
Oh,
pass. But
sorry, I just got caught up, Lily. We were almost out of time. So sorry.
Well, I wish we didn't. But I think that this was a really great conversation, and I would love to hear what we would like our next steps to be. Because we already have a helpful proposal from you, Chris, with some good kind of like options for what next steps could look like. I think it might be helpful for the senior fellows and Ashley and David to maybe get together and think through what this could look like in Kentucky. And then maybe, obviously we need to think what our next steps look like from our side, and then get back to you, I think might be what our next step is.
And if you do have any papers, white papers or whatever to share, I think that would be helpful as well.
I'll send out or put on the teams. Do y'all have your teams, right? Gateway Course Success Teams access for the collaborative?
Yeah.
Okay. I will put this in there from Motivate Lab as a folder inside the Gateway Course Success folder so that you all can access the documents that Chris has shared with me.
Fantastic.
And then we will be able to kind of start that conversation. And so Ashley will reach out to look at times to connect with you all for that next step.
I love it. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's great getting to hear. Yeah, it's great getting to meet you all.
All right.
Yeah, it
and
was
I'm
great. Thank you.
recording. I'll share it, David, with you and JC.
That sounds great. I appreciate it.